Welcome to the Realizations Podcast. I'm Andrea Gordon, your host, and I'm excited to explore the world of real estate with you. In a world where perceptions often overshadow reality, Realizations seeks to redefine what it means to be a realtor. Join me as we peel back the layers of the industry, uncovering inspiring stories and celebrating the good in real estate. Whether you're a homeowner, a fellow realtor, or simply curious, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Realizations, where perceptions meet reality. Let's dive right in. Thank you so much, Melody Shipley, for being on the show with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Realizations is an interesting choice of mine. I decided to create Realizations because I feel like our profession is being demeaned a little bit out in the public. I feel like with these NAR, DOJ lawsuits, what have you, the biggest issue of all is that no one really knows what we do. No one really understands the work that a realtor does. Nobody understands the hours that we keep. No one understands how complicated and complex the job actually is. So my goal by doing this podcast is to educate the general public about what all is involved in being a realtor. And I've been talking to people from all walks of real estate life, everyone from risk management attorneys to office managers to escrow officers to coaches to vendors to other realtors in other states. Because one of the other things that goes on in real estate is that real estate is not uniformly practiced all across the United States. For example, in California, and I believe in your state, you handle the entire transaction from start to finish. You meet the buyer, you write all the contract, you are there for the closing, you make sure everything is good, you sign on the dotted line, you get out of there. Some states, an attorney handles the closing. So I talked the other day with a wonderful gentleman from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, who works both in South Dakota and Minnesota because he works on the border. And Minnesota is an attorney state and South Dakota is not. So he handles real estate two ways. And I've experienced it myself here in California because once you pass sort of the demarcation line of San Luis Obispo, they handle things very, very differently in Southern California. So for example, the escrow officer handles all the paperwork there. You're like Vanna White a little bit. When you're doing a transaction in Southern California, whereas up north, we do everything. So in your state, how is real estate handled?
We do everything. We from start to finish. And sometimes they've worked with an attorney to write it but a lot of times they end up reaching back out.
Okay.
I have a checklist that I work from for sellers and buyers, and there's at least 180 steps on there from start to finish.
Back to you in Washington State and what you do and how you do it.
Well, so we do it from start to finish. Very rarely have I worked with an attorney. And I have a 180 checklist steps that I do. And each one of those steps have things, our checklists have checklists.
Yes,
to complete this, right? So, and when I walk through that with my clients and help them understand, I don't give them the whole 180 checklist. I just say, I give them, this is what I'm offering you, and this is what I help you with from start to finish. And from opening the door and searching the properties to getting you to the closing table. And a lot of them are just even ones that have bought and sold before. They're just like, I didn't realize all that went into this. I just, they either use an attorney in another state or they tried to do it themselves and don't want to do that again.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing that we have going on in real estate right now is that it's sort of like one individual at a client at a time figures out, oh my Lord, these people work so hard. It is very challenging. I could not have done this without them. And yet our trade organizations and a lot of the media promulgate a bad image, honestly.
I
You know,
do.
and
They do. They do.
a lot of the reality TV shows, you know, people would think that we drive around in Cadillacs, you know, and drink champagne and talk smack about our clients and things like that. And it's absolutely the furthest thing from the truth. So how long have you been doing real estate?
6 years. My husband and I do this together.
I saw that from your notice there. And when you got into real estate, what had you been doing before?
Well, I've been in administration for 30 plus years, HR assistant to the president or vice president or managers,
Hmm.
engineers, things like that. Um, yeah, so bookkeeping background. So
Okay, so
this
you
is
have a really, really intense, meticulous administrative background in what
yes,
you do. So you're probably incredible with paperwork, I'm gonna guess. Do you handle your own files for yourself or do you
I
have a
do.
transaction coordinator? Okay,
I
so
have
you
my own.
handle.
Yeah, I like to have my hands on it because I know where it is and what it when it got done. And I have thought about transaction coordinating, coordination.
Hmm.
You know, doing that out. We in fact were hoping that our one of our daughters would step into that role. And that still could be a possibility because she is meticulous like I am. And
Hmm.
so that's I know things are the boxes are going to get checked that I want checked. But that would be it would be a hard transition for me to let someone else because I just feel like I know where I'm at all the time for my
Right,
client to give them a good answer instead of saying,
right.
wait, let me call my assistant.
Right. I have staff as well. And it's interesting because you're the only one who really, really cares about each and every one of your transactions. No one's going to take the kind of care over it that you do. And it's very hard to learn to delegate things because they're going to make mistakes. They're
Yeah.
not going to be perfect. And I'm a perfectionist like you. So I
Well,
totally
and
get
they're gonna miss the tone in the
it.
client's voice. They're gonna miss they're not gonna know all of the little things that I've discussed with them or that they have shared with me. And
Right.
so when something happens, they may not that they would prefer not to happen.
Hmm.
I'm gonna know that, but I can't always convey that.
Right.
It's it's just time consuming to do that and really kind of hard.
Right.
They're just things that you pick up and you catch and you pay attention to the facial expressions and the tone of the voice and things like that. And that's important. They're
Yeah.
trusting us to with a large sum of money to
Right.
help them get through this process and know what they're doing at the end of the day.
Right, absolutely. And I find that even the most sophisticated of clients don't know what we do, don't know what they're supposed to do, don't know what's involved, find a lot of the paperwork to be arbitrary, think it's not important, but
Right.
of course it is. So yeah, all of that is part of it. How many transactions would you say you and your husband do annually?
12, 6 to 12. It depends. This year's been really slow for us, but we've had two new grandbabies this
Oh,
year.
congratulations.
We had a car accident recently. There's been a
Oh,
lot of things that have kind of slowed us down. Plus the market has been just been really slow here in the Valley.
mhm.
Buyers, we had 8 deals within 2 months, just like they're still clients, but they just everything came to a halt. Like,
Right. That's, you know, and that is everyone I talk to, by the way. And I've been talking to people from California to New York City to
mhm,
Vermont. Um, Everyone is saying the market is exactly the same. And there are several reasons for it. One of them, the biggest one, of course, is interest rates.
interest rates.
It's just killing the market for people
Agreed.
because, you know, 2 years ago, somebody could buy something that cost $200,000 more for the same amount of money. Now, if you are a
Exactly.
buyer, you're going to hold off and wait until you can get an interest rate like that, or you've saved up more money so you won't have to be borrowing so much. The other thing is the election. Every 4 years, doesn't matter who it is, every 4 years, the market tanks right around election time because people have a little bit of uncertainty about what the next steps are going to be for them and what the ramifications of whoever gets elected will be. The reality is, of course, as we all know, that who the president is absolutely actually doesn't make very much difference for a real estate transaction. But just like the stock market is very emotional, real estate is very emotional.
It is.
So, so people sort of hold their breath until after the election, and then they will have be able to figure out what to do.
Yep.
You know, and the other thing I think that's happening is because it's the time of year that it is at this point. We're heading into the holiday season.
Mhm.
So a lot of people are going to hunker down through the holidays and then
Absolutely.
resume their search in January. And that's a real typical thing to happen every year. I've been a realtor for 27 years, by the way.
Awesome.
And it's those patterns are always the same. It doesn't matter what's going on in the economy. It doesn't matter
Yep.
what's going on with whatever. We're not in a downturn like we were in 2008.
No,
We're
not at
just
all.
in kind of a stall is essentially what it is. But it's hard because my sellers, they saw their friend sell their house a year ago and make an insane amount of money, and their house is sitting on the market and it's nicer than their friend's house. And, most sellers think their houses are nicer than their friends' houses, but in this case, it's actually true. They really are nicer than their friend's house that sold for that much money because there were more buyers out.
Right. Right.
Um,
Well, and there
yeah.
was a lot of fear going on. There was a lot of
Mhm.
you know, yes, serious uncertainty. Not that the uncertainty that we have right now isn't serious, but that there was a lot of frenzy that
Yeah.
I would call that. I would say it was just frenzy because I was writing offers left and right during late 21 through 22 and
Hmm.
$80,000 over
Yeah.
plus, right?
Yeah.
And getting beat out by cash
Yeah.
buyers coming in that waived inspections. It was crazy.
What is an average price point where you are?
450 to 550.
Okay.
That's me. That's like bare bones.
Wow.
Yeah.
In my neighborhood, want to know what an average price point is? You're
And
gonna,
you're in California, so
yeah, it's 1,200,000.
wow. Okay, well,
Yeah. Yeah. But the other side of it is that it's becoming completely unaffordable to live here for so many people. I mean, property taxes alone, my own property taxes are over $20,000 a year.
wow. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know how people do it, honestly.
The
And yet they do it.
I've seen fluctuating taxes.
Hmm.
Like a home that I'm working with on a client right now, it went from 237,000 to 400 something, like, and then dropped back down
Oh yeah.
$100,000. And I'm just like, so do you guys owe them taxes? This is like,
You know what happens is the tax assessor gives you the opportunity to when they reassess you, usually
mhm,
they're 6 months behind, by the way, because they're so slow with what they do. So let's say the market shot way up. The tax assessor will figure it out 6 months after the fact, send you a thing saying, wait, we've reassessed your property and now it's worth blah.
right.
And then you have the ability to send them comps and say, no, 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 you are wrong. And
I
they will actually listen, which is a really good thing. I have actually, it's funny, I have sold 8 people on my block the houses that they live in. I
mhm.
was the listing agent on all of them. And so everybody on the block, when the newest assessment came, contacted me and went, wait a minute, what can I do about this? And so I sent them comps so that they could then refute their value. So that's
That
another way in which realtors can help people, by the way,
absolutely.
is by providing people with a comparative market analysis as often as they ask for one. So,
Absolutely. And a sale that I had earlier this year, we the tax assessor's office had the information wrong on the build year, which
mhm,
created some issues. And I got to work with my seller and we dug and got paperwork sent to them and had the proper documentation showing that the actual build date, and that all got corrected, and which helped him
mhm. Good.
in
That's,
the
see,
sale.
I mean,
And
we
yeah.
do good deeds all the time. Now, do you volunteer?
Yes. Well, my husband and I have been pastors at our church, and we've kind of stepped back from that responsibility for a little while, with 10 grandbabies and the things
Yeah.
going on right now. Yeah, we have a couple homes here in the valley that we work with, like at-risk women and men.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's all kinds of things here in the valley, food banks and things like that. Lots of places to volunteer and help out.
That's
Um,
wonderful. I mean, that's the other thing I'm charting in this podcast is I'm noticing that realtors constantly give back to the community. Now, of course, it's part of our marketing too, because we're able to say, hey, I helped out at this Habitat for
Right.
Humanity build. I did this, that, and the other thing. It makes you look good out in the world. But the reality is, realtors by and large care about the communities that they
Yes,
serve,
we do.
and we work within them. And that's an important thing. How is
Absolutely.
it working with your husband as a partner? I'm curious about that.
It took a little while of kind of figuring out what our unique things were. My husband is the people person. I can be the people person, but I get the cogs going and write the contracts generally. He can do some of those things, but he prefers not to. So I let him go out and do all the, if I'm available, I'll go with him to the showings, but he loves the people part, the setting up the signs. We've worked with a lot of elderly that we help
Mhm.
them transition into smaller accommodations, and that's a very hard time. Very, very hard time because most of the time they've lived a lifetime in their home, and
Right,
determining how to, make that smaller.
right.
It's just an incredibly hard emotional time, and we're gifted to be able to work with them and love them through it and help them through the process. We've got connections throughout the valley where people will come and pick up all the stuff for their house if they're done, if they're
Mhm.
just ready to go. Estate sales, those kinds of things. We
Right.
just help through the whole process from start to finish.
Do you have an SRES designation?
I don't. I should. I've been thinking
Wow,
about
you
getting
should
that.
get one.
Yes.
I got one, but that doesn't tend to be who my clientele actually are.
Mhm.
Uh, it's very often the people that I'm dealing with who are older will very often decide to stay in their home in this area and get in-home health care
Right.
because their property taxes are so low. Downsizing for them would be
Would
hardship. They would get something way not as nice as what they're living in for more money.
more
And
money, more money,
yeah,
more taxes.
yeah.
it's just incredible. That's we were working to help my husband's parents move over here from the other side.
Mhm.
And they wouldn't have gained anything really in taxes because the increase in the last 2 years.
Right,
So
right,
yeah,
exactly.
they're on a property that they have owned since before my husband was born. So they're just like, yeah, I think we're going to be good for a while.
And that makes perfect sense. And also I've read studies that say that older people, when they stay in their environment, a lot of stuff that normally would happen where they would become disoriented,
Doesn't
um,
happen.
doesn't happen. They're able to keep with their routines, and that helps them to stay healthier, what have you. So I'm actually kind of an advocate for that, although downsizing is good for some people. Some people are just rattling around in houses that have tons of stairs where
Right,
it's not really reasonable for them to think about installing an elevator or doing anything like that. And then those people do have to move.
right.
I just met with a woman over the weekend who's got this enormous house in the Claremont Knolls part of Berkeley, and she's moved to this place called Rossmore, which is an adult active community. And she moved there largely because she was lonely and felt like if she moved to a place like that, first off, no stairs. Secondly, and her house has a ton of stairs. And secondly, she would be in connection with community and be able to connect with people because she was feeling very isolated and lonely and frankly scared because of the fire danger in our hills. Are
Right.
you having the same insurance crisis in Washington State?
Absolutely. Flooding and fire. A forestry, if you have any forestry on your property, insurance is either dropping you or just increasing it so extremely
Mhm.
exorbitantly that people
Yeah,
are going without insurance. And that's just
that's
extremely
crazy.
scary.
That
Yeah.
is super crazy when they can only do that if they own their house outright.
Right.
Because if you have a loan, you have to have insurance.
It, it,
I
it,
yeah, I've
mm,
done over 1,000 transactions, and I probably gave about 50% of them to one farmer's agent during the course of my career. And farmers dropped me, and I got a letter in the mail saying, we're not going to re-up you. And I called her, and she was like, can't do anything about it.
wow.
And I was like, whoa, that's amazing. I've given you a lot of business. I can't quite believe this.
Wow.
So I actually switched insurance carriers and ended up having to get something called California Fair Plan.
Hmm.
which is a state mandated program where all the big carriers are forced to pay into this program and then provide insurance for everybody. Now it's twice as expensive as regular insurance. So I'm now, instead of paying $4,000 a year for insurance as I used to, I'm now paying like $12,000 because I have the California Fair Plan policy and I also have my other policy, which doesn't cover any of the stuff that the Fair Plan covers and
Right.
vice versa. My cars are on that as well, but it's very, very, very expensive.
Uh,
I know, crazy, huh?
well, we worked with during 20 late 20s and 20, through 23 really. We worked with a lot of people coming from the East Coast
Hmm.
that were coming over here, and it was a sticker shock
Oh, yeah.
when they got the taxes and their insurance bills, and that's a conversation I have with them up front. This is where
Hmm.
we're at. This is what these are the things you're going to have to. I have a due diligence checklist for my sellers and buyers. I'm like, look, I'm partnering with you, and you're
Hmm.
hiring me to help you get through this process. But these are the things I need you to be responsible for, so that you feel in charge. You know what you're buying and what all the things that when we get to the closing table, you're not going to get a shock.
Hmm.
And so that's helped a lot because it helped, and it helps really when I have a client who's willing to do their part. That's not
Right.
always the case. They're just like, well, you're doing it all. I'm like, yes, but I'm not promising this square footage. I'm not promising these things. These are
Right.
you want this land for a particular reason. You need to call the county, and I'll give them all the numbers. I'll give them my contacts. And I said, but you need to hear from them that your needs are going to get satisfied with the reason you want to purchase this property.
I find it fascinating that you and your husband were pastors and then went into real estate. And I find that amazing, actually. And, it's probably really great for all of your clients because they probably just um, sense the love and the joy that comes off of you and the help that you can be to them personally. I always feel like you scratch a realtor, you find another profession entirely because it's not the sort of thing that people wake up and when they're 4 years old and decide they want to do.
No,
It's
no.
something you come to after a lifetime of doing something else, usually.
Well, my best friend has been a from high school was has been a realtor with Keller Williams probably since she was 19 or 20.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was not something I was interested in at all.
Hmm.
And I'm from Texas originally and moved here 9 years ago when I married my husband. And I worked for a realtor there in Texas, and I did his books.
Got it.
I there was a lot of things I learned about that process because that I now practice myself, helping his get his books in order. And he wanted me to be his assistant and was willing to pay for that. And I was like, no, you work 24/7. I don't want to,
Yep.
I was single at the time, and I was caring for my mom full time. And I was like, yeah, I don't have that time to give to this right now. Um, so that at that point, it was like, no, I'm not interested. And then when we got up here, um, my husband was driving for Uber for a while. And when
Mhm.
we were seeking what the next step was in our life, like in a 2 week span, he got like 5 realtors in his car. And so he began to explore that. And a dear friend of his who has been an agent was with John L. Scott for his whole career. Um,
Mhm.
called us on his birthday and said, "Hey, have you guys ever thought about being real estate agents? I watched your Facebook profile, and you guys are amazing with the people, and your videos are fun, and just maybe that you should consider this." And it was just kind of like that nail that just said, "All right."
Right.
And
Right.
everything fell into place. We went to like one of the touted schools, Rockwell Institute,
Hmm.
up here in Washington. I'm not sure if they have them all over.
I
Um,
don't I don't know of them, but I'm sure they're great.
but
Yeah.
we did in classroom.
Yes.
I would recommend that for anyone because
That- That's what I do too.
yeah, my husband said that, "Hey, Melody, you're going to rock it on the computer. You'll get done. You'll be done in no time." Me, I'm gonna take the whole 6 months. And
Right.
and so I said, well, then let's go do 3 weeks at school. And we were
Yeah.
fortunate enough to be able to do that at the time. And it was well worth it. Well worth it.
It's super worth it because what happens when you're in a classroom environment is that other people ask questions that you might not have thought to ask. The instructor is usually somebody who's actually been in the business. So
Yep.
if you ask them a question, they will have a decent answer for you and they'll be able to give you the why as well as the what. Whereas if you just take the class online, you're not exposed to that. And so it's sort of like learning how to drive a car. You get your
Yep.
license and then you figure out how to do it. Well, when you've gone to a class through where people are and where you're actually exposed to that, it really, really helps you to be
It,
ready for what you're going to get yourself into because
it
it's a
did.
huge, huge thing. And you're right, it is 24/7.
Well, and I think in the classroom there was a point where he felt like, okay, this is not for me. And the teacher, she was so incredible. She said, look, you are here for me to help you pass the test. You are going to start learning once you get out in the field. So
Exactly.
wrap your mind around that and
Hmm.
pass the test, and then
Hmm.
and then get involved with someone, a team who's going to walk with you through it.
Right. Right.
So that was very valuable for us.
Well, very, very cool. Well, our time is at an end now, and you are just a lovely human being. It is
Oh, thank
wonderful to
you.
meet you. And where can somebody find you if they want to buy property in Washington State?
MNMShipley.com. You go right there, click on our real estate page. We're upgrading that right now and working through some things. We're helping a young man who is just starting his web designing career. So we're letting him help us work through that. So mnmshipley.com, and you can click on real estate, or you can Melody Shipley at kw.com is my email.
And a
And you
phone number?
509-860-0375.
Well, you are just lovely. Thank you. Thank you
Well,
for being here. I would
Andrea,
love
thank you so
talking to
much.
you. Take good care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Realizations Podcast. I hope our conversation has shed light on the true essence of real estate and the people behind it. As we wrap up, I want to extend my gratitude to our listeners for their support and engagement. Your feedback drives the heart of this podcast, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to the Realizations Podcast and leaving a review. Your support helps us reach more listeners and spread our message of positivity in the real estate industry. Until next time, remember to keep an open mind, embrace empathy, and always seek the good in every situation. I'm Andrea Gordon signing off from Realizations. See you next time.